Coming up on OTH, Raymond and I talk about patch 12.13, some of the TSM roster moves in the Reginald article, as well as week 4 of LCS. We hope you enjoyed this episode of On the Hunt. Welcome, everybody, to episode 60 of On the Hunt, a League of Legends podcast. I'm your co-host, Chris, aka the executive producer, because I'm back at it again, trying to make some YouTube videos for my own personal, satisfaction,
I like
which
it.
is something I haven't done in like a year. I was messing around like about a year ago, pretty much when we started this podcast together, and then I just kind of gave up for a bit. But now, trying it again, putting some uh, creative experimentation out there.
You're ready to get YouTube famous again, is what you're telling me.
Yeah, ready to get the affiliate links and the G Fuel sponsorship, and whoever else wants to come on by. Toothbrushes, I'll take them all.
Raid Shadow Legends, anybody?
I heard
HelloFresh.
they pay well. I heard they pay well. That's all I'll
That's
say.
look, we're trying to get money in the bank, baby. That's what
Yeah.
I'm here for.
And yeah, joining me on this episode of this lovely show is our other co-host Raymond. What's going on, man? You just got back, and actually we haven't talked in like a month, I think.
I know it's been a while. I was just looking when we opened up our files here, and the last one was from June 27th. So we're a good week away from a whole month. I don't know. It's been good. Had a trip to Spain. That was pretty cool. Ended up not doing too much because it was like a wedding the first week, and that was a lot going on with that. And the second week, it was just like hanging by the beach, trying to do as little as possible, but in Spain. So that was good. Made the trip back all right. Was a little jet lag, just like I feel like the jet lag coming back though is all right because you
Get
basically
back
just like
safe.
wake up early, and sometimes that makes you feel productive. And then I'm back to waking up 15 minutes before work starts, so we're on schedule now. It's all
As it
good.
should be.
Yeah.
Rolling out of bed, brushing your teeth at lunch or during the 10 a.m. meeting. One of
Yeah.
those two. What was your favorite thing you ate out in Spain?
My favorite thing that we ate there. Gosh, there was like the thing with the Spanish diet is that it like takes a little bit to get used to because where we were, the like main thing was jamon, which is just like ham. It's like where they have this like the huge cured leg of ham, and then they like slice it really thin, like off it, like all the way down. It's kind of like prosciutto, but it's Spanish and not quite as salty, but it's pretty good. Um, and that was like the specialty that we went to. I like that. They had a guy like at the wedding reception where it was just like this guy and like his title or whatever his business card said like Hamon like guy, like that was his whole job, and he had his own pedestal that the leg stood on, and it was engraved with his name. And then like just literally for the whole like hour long that we were out, like in the cocktail hour, he was just slicing plates of this ham and he'd hand it to people, and then you just walk around and eat it. That was
Man,
good.
he's certified.
Yeah, a true professional.
That's pretty sweet, man. And then you said you were there for your cousin's wedding. How was that?
It was good. It was fun. It was like we have a pretty big family on that side, on my dad's side. So it was a whole bunch of people a whole bunch of white people, that all made the trip out, and then the wife's side was all Spanish people. So it was a good solid mix for a party. It was fun. I think I don't know. The other thing with Spain is that the schedule is so fucked up. It's like you like lunch is like the big meal that you're supposed to eat. That's like at like 1 o'clock. Like usually you don't eat, like I never ate breakfast. It's like you'd get pastries and an espresso kind of thing, and then you'd have lunch, and then there's siesta in the afternoon where like nobody's open. Like you're not supposed to be out. You're just supposed to be at home out of the sun, and then dinner wouldn't like start until like 9 o'clock. So like the
Whoa.
wedding, like the night of the wedding was like the ceremony was at like 7, and then we had like an hour like cocktail hour, and then lunch or dinner wasn't served until like 9:45 or 10. And then the wedding, like the after party, was until like 4, and then we went to a bar afterwards that was next door to the castle, and it was insane, honestly insane.
I'm sorry, did you say castle?
Yeah, that was why the wedding had been like delayed like a year or so because of COVID, but also because they wanted to have it in a castle. So it was in a old Spanish castle.
That's fair.
Yeah,
Well, congrats to your cousin.
thanks, thank you. I'll pass it on.
And now let's get back to our lonely League of Legends related lives.
Hell yeah, dude.
Back safe at home on the headsets. And let's get into it with patch 12.3, the latest patch that dropped about a week ago. And there's a whole lot of stuff going on here, man. There's a new champion. There's a lot of champion adjustments, item adjustments, a whole bunch of new skins. And really, it's just like probably like 20 pages of just information laid out here. So yeah, let me go through it. I think it's about 11 champion buffs, 2 champion nerfs, and some adjustments for Gwen and Sivir. We'll definitely talk about Sivir. Changes to some items, including Leandry's Demonic Embrace and Sunderer, which have been doing like super well this past season. And then if you've seen any of the new champion, let's talk about that as well. Let's start with her actually. Have you seen any Nilah walking around?
Yeah, I haven't played too much, but I've been watching streams and stuff, trying to get the info on the new champ. She seems pretty decent. It's really interesting. I think what I didn't realize when we were doing like all the previews and stuff, and just looking at her spotlight, like that she's actually a melee champ, like full on like a melee champ. Unless you hit your Q. Um, and that makes it kind of interesting when it comes to like builds. Like you can get Conqueror and stack Conqueror like faster on your autos, and then also like buy stuff like Death Stance and have the like fully effectiveness of that item. Um, but it does
Hmm.
make laning like pretty hard for her. A lot of like uh, just it's really easy to get bullied out from range, and you don't have that much agency to like fight back really, unless the enemies like give you a lot of space, and let you like engage on them, or if your support is helpful a lot with that. So it can be pretty rough depending on the matchup that you're against. But once she gets a few items, and like probably like 3 items is when she like really pops off, when she gets Infinity Edge. She can be really strong.
Sweet. So she's actually just Mordekaiser.
A little bit like the Mordekaiser of old, yeah. But it's like once you do get strong, you do have like with the double dashes and your ulti to have the kind of like wombo potential. There's a lot of stuff you can do in fights, like from a considerable distance, like that's a little less than just Mordekaiser running at you kind of thing.
Uh huh.
Early
All
on
right.
though,
Let's.
she's really abusable. That's advice playing against her. As from my a couple games that I've played as her, it feels like she's really abusable if you have any kind of range. You got to take advantage.
The funny thing is, I thought the same way about Samira at first too. When people were trying to figure her out, I was like, dude, that champ has no range. You just poke her out, and then when she does try to go in, then you'll kill her because she'll be at like 30% health
Yeah,
by the time she like decides to commit.
I think Samira has a little bit more, like at least early on, because she has the extra damage like on her passive and stuff. That I think she has more, and I mean like her W and her E, I think do more damage than Nilah's stuff. So you end up with more all-in damage as Samira that Nilah early on just like doesn't have. Like it's if you EQ in, and you ever miss Q, or you ever just like get hit by every ability kind of thing, you just don't have that much damage.
Uh huh. Interesting. Interesting. Well, she's already been hotfix nerfed the next day, so
True.
we'll see how it keeps on going as time goes on, and whether or not she'll make an appearance in the next patch. Apparently for 9 patches in a row, which has happened to Zeri. But we'll talk about that another time.
Yeah.
Let's talk about some of the Sivir changes, man. She got a mid scope update, which we usually would have covered in like the in between dev patch notes. But this time around, we've just got the full thing. So I'll just try to go over it really quickly. Some base stat adjustments, changes to her passive, where the bonus move speed is more, but it lasts for a shorter duration. changes to Boomerang Blade, where the cooldown is always higher, but the speed going out is faster and slower on the way back. And then it also scales with crit chance, where it does more damage the more crit chance that you have. So pretty cool. Do you want to stop there? Any comments so far?
I'll also add on the Q. She has a scaling cast time on it now with attack speed, so later in the game it
Ooh.
doesn't feel like you're missing autos by using it.
Uh huh.
And then the thing with the move speed on her passive to keep note of is that like that is really good for kiting, since you are usually wasting duration on the buff anyway by auto attacking in between. So now if you're auto attacking and moving after really quickly, you'll have like a lot more move speed on average.
Makes sense. Next up is changes to her ricochet, where at level 5 it does noticeably less damage, and so we'll talk about how they make that up. Um, they used to have the a bonus attack speed given to her W through her ulti. Now that's just built into her W to give her attack speed, which is really nice. And then it also can bounce more than it can bounce and can hit the same target more than once, up to twice, which is like a really weird way for them to phrase it.
Right.
Um,
Yeah,
yeah, what do you think about that?
the W is a pretty interesting change. Like he said, it does like basically half the damage that it did before at max rank. But with the multiple bounces, and the other note is that now it's a buff with a duration instead of over just like your next three attacks. So
Ooh,
technically,
yeah,
it's
good
over
point.
like 4 seconds that you can get as many attacks off as you can, and with the bonus attack speed and all that, you can get a lot more ricochets than just the three that were standard before. So with that, and with being able to bounce back to the same champion, like in team fights, theoretically you can get a lot more damage off, like later in the game once you have a lot of attack speed.
Yeah, so a lot of her damage is gonna come from this now. Not that it didn't before, but yeah. Let's talk about her spell shield next, where it no longer restores mana. Instead, it gives you um, health back if you block an enemy ability, which is kind of interesting. I mean, it was kind of weird that it gave her mana back in the first place, and then like some matchups you just like were afraid to cast a spell against her because then you'd give her free mana and then therefore free pushing power, like infinitely. I'm thinking of like like Caitlyn matchups where like you just don't put down a trap because that's
Right.
free mana for her.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a little weird.
What do you think about this change?
they've they've compensated it with like I mean one, you still get a heal now, so like it's still useful and important like to block stuff, but they've also compensated the like mana costs on our other abilities. They're a little lower now, so overall you're about the same. You know, you still, if you buy an essence reaver, you're basically have infinite mana. I kind of like it. It seems like in lane it, I don't know, it works a little bit more like you expect, you know, like you at this way you want to save E for blocking something important still, but while you're lower health, it is, you know, it's useful in fights. Like you can really like bait and turn with that. But yeah, it's pretty much the same as it was before.
Mm-hmm. And then lastly is her ulti, which they've given a shorter cooldown and a longer duration as you rank it up. And then also, if Sivir assists with a recent cooldown while her ulti is active, the aura on it will also refresh its duration. And then her basic attacks during her ulti duration reduce basic ability cooldowns by half a second per attack, which is huge. And then it looks like it also doesn't give movement speed at the start of it, so it's just ramping movement speed over the duration. So, what do you think about some of the big changes to that, where basically buffs her auto attacks?
Yeah, the auto attack buff is pretty cool. I think I've been watching some people talk about it. I think it was Arrow who was saying like now you kind of don't need to build like Essence Reaver or cooldown because your ulti has it built in. You know, you can pretty much guarantee that you're gonna have you know, if you ulti and you're in a fight and you have W on, like you're gonna basically have full W uptime because the cooldown is gonna start ticking like with every attack that you make, right? And you'll have a couple keys to get off. The most important thing for team fights probably is like how fast you get your spell shield back up. So that's really nice too. And it's a flat cooldown, so I guess because it's a flat cooldown reduction, it can be useful to still get ability haste. You know, like that's not gonna um, devalue it. You'll technically get more value out of it, but you'll probably get as much cooldown as you need out of having your ulti on, um, which is it's pretty cool. It's a good feeling to be able to like pop your ulti and then like you're suddenly a lot more powerful than just having bonus move speed, which is nice, especially in like 1v1 situations if you ever run into it.
For sure, man. All right. Are there any champions that stick out to you that you want to talk about from this patch?
I think there were a couple. I think I want to talk about the Gwen changes. They changed her, like some of her regen stuff, but a lot of nerfs to her damage, if I remember right. She does less damage to minions, right? And less true damage overall, um, which seems pretty good. And then also her duration on her W is lowered, and her E cooldown has been kind of messed with. So like the refund is lower at early ranks. So it's overall a longer cooldown early in lane and that kind of stuff. And then the last thing was her ulti getting changed. So the ulti does more damage, like each needle does more damage, and her R reset, like how before you had to like auto in between each cast of her R for the like more and more needles. Now it's just like a single, like a normal like second in between each cast. You don't need the autos, which I don't know. Overall, it seems like she's a lot weaker in lane, which seems good. I don't know. I don't know, like I'm not a top laner, but it seems like she's getting picked a lot just like as a generically strong top. So I imagine that this means she can be a little bit more punished. Like having a longer cooldown in E means it's harder to just like use it to Q and trade like that. Like in short trades, and you'll have a longer window to punish her afterwards. The R change, I don't know if that's like super impactful. I think it sounds like it just makes her team fighting more consistent. Like you can have follow up from a long distance on like a priority target if you can only like hit front line or something. So I don't know. It seems interesting. I imagine that we'll see a little less Gwen, but I'm not sure really how impactful all these are.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you that she's been seeing a lot more play. After having like some time off last summer split, she came back a lot this summer split so far. Or yeah, summer split.
Hmm.
Um, one champion I wanted to point out was just three nerfs to Volibear's skills. His Q, W, and E all received nerfs this patch, and he's also just another champion that we've seen being picked out a bit out in the jungle. So really interesting to see some of the nerfs that they did to him, like less move speed on his Q, less damage on his W, and then less damage on his E, both in general and against monsters as well. So just overall, like putting him down. I'm not sure how much of an effect that will have, but um, without a doubt, it's like gonna be something noticeable.
Yeah, it is. It is. These felt like pretty big nerfs, just like a lot less damage overall, and it like you're at this point you're probably just picking Volibear because you want to dive some lane, and you can still do that. Like he still has the point and click CC, and he still has the shield, and he still can turn off towers. But if you're expecting him to be able to duel or do anything like that, he's not going to have as much damage in those kind of scenarios. So he's probably going to be just like building straight tank a lot more.
Uh huh. Any other champions from this patch you want to point out?
Let's see. Not too much. They put in a Renekton buff in here, which seems weird. I wonder how many people are just gonna start picking Renekton again. They had some weird Master Yi changes. I don't know. He ran over solo queue a little bit still, right? I don't know how crazy that is now. I think he had some hotfix nerfs too. And then the other one that maybe is probably pro focused is the changes to Corki rockets. They gave him like less base damage and less AP scaling. So like the kind of hybrid build I think is a little worse now. He still has pretty good AD scaling, which means you want to prioritize like your Manamune and your Ravenous Hydra, those kind of items. But if you're going Ludens or Void Staff, you just end up with less damage overall on your poke ultis.
Mm-hmm. All right. Anything else in this patch that you want to cover over?
Oh, the other thing were with the items. I think that's all the champions, but they made a couple interesting changes to how Leandry's and Demonic Embrace worked. I don't know if you knew about this, but like the burn passives on both of those both of those items didn't stack with each other. Like if you had multiple people on the same team that were like typically Leandry's users, it'd be kind of bad to both buy Leandry's because only one will proc whoever like procced it first.
That make
So
that makes sense to me, kind of. But
I
go ahead.
Yeah, but so now they've made it so different instances of the item will both proc on the same, on the same champion. So you can have a Zyra support build Liandry's and also your mid lane Cho'Gath or whatever. And if they hit the same person, they'll be burning for, essentially twice the damage. Um, I think I think it's most impactful for like support champs like that, or especially if you're in solo queue and you get stuck like with if you get stuck with a brand or a Zyra support as a mid laner that would otherwise build Leandries, you can still do that. There's like some because I think Leandries has a AP ratio associated with it, not just the percent max health damage. So if you're like competing, I guess, with a low income support that's gonna have less AP, technically if they procced it first, theirs would be the only one that did damage, and you would just be refreshing the duration as like a mid laner who followed up. Now you'll both get like the optimal damage because both will proc. I don't think it's really game breaking, but just like it works probably more like you'd expect if you wouldn't think like, oh, I'm gonna build this item and then it's not gonna do as much damage because somebody else is doing it instead.
Uh huh.
Yeah, anything else for you from this one?
I'm trying to make sense of these Sundra changes, but I kind of hate like changes where they reconfigure how the math is calculated. Like instead of having it do percent damage of the target's maximum health, now it's percent AD of the target's maximum health, and that's just something where like you'd have to go and test it to see if it's stronger or not.
Yeah, I think in general it's supposed to be weaker now. Like this is a nerf, and especially for champs that would build it like as like a damage item kind of. Because it's based off of base AD and now at like lower portion of the max health. So you're getting just overall like less value because of that. Like if you're building it for tank shredding purposes.
Uh huh.
And they changed the healing of it too. I think to try and even out the healing. But I don't know how much that. Yeah, like you said, is probably like you have to try it for numbers.
Yeah, it's funny how like some items have been a problem like ever since their inception. Like Gale Force was really strong for a really long time. Sundra has been strong ever since people figured out how strong it was. And
Yeah.
then I remember Stridebreaker was super strong when they had buffed it for months. And same thing for Gore Drinker as well. Um, so I wonder like how much longer like this iteration of mythic items is gonna go on if we'll see these again next year. That thought just like came into my head.
Yeah, it is kind of feels a little bit like there's there's definitely been holes that they've dug themselves into, or like whether intentional or not, right? Like you said, I remember the Gore Drinker and then the Stridebreaker metas both seemed like, well, Gore Drinker was really strong, and so people would just build Gore Drinker, and then they nerfed Gore Drinker, but they were like, hey, you can still build Stridebreaker, by the way, which is, it was a good item. We made it a better item, so it makes you interested. And then it was like, oh, nice, now you can build Stridebreaker, and they just left it like really strong for a while. But yeah, I
Yeah.
wonder, I wonder, yeah, that's a good thought. I don't know if they'll keep everything the same. All these feel like they fill, decent niches. At least I don't know how you would just rip one out and not have a replacement. I don't know how that would work. Be a big overhaul if they just started pulling out mythic items, I feel like.
Yeah. All right, and then also just a ton of the Star Guardian skins dropped to this patch, and there's going to be more coming on the way, including Star Guardian Echo, Kaisa, Nilah, Sona, and Star Nemesis Fiddlesticks. Do you have a favorite out of all of these?
I don't know. Out of this one, I feel like I don't know. Kaisa's the poster girl out of this drop, I feel like. But Sona has this cool rat that's her familiar assistant. I don't know if you've played any of the Star Guardian visual novel in the client yet, but
I
Sona's
have
rat is
not.
cool.
I see. Does it have a name?
I forget the names. They're all like weird anime names that I don't have committed to memory.
For sure.
Yeah, I'm
All
just here
right.
for next patch when they have Quinn.
I know you're already topped up.
Topped off my RP, yeah.
All right, just a couple of more items before we get into the LCS weekend. One would be a change in the TSM roster, initially leaked by Double Lift, randomly after like the Mr. Beast event that happened during the off week at LCS, and then it came true where three members are moved off of the main roster and and four more came in actually. So what they did is they um, removed Huni, Shenyi, and Tactical from the main lineup, with the reasoning for Huni being that he actually has really damaged wrists, and it's possible he might not even play pro ever again. We'll see about that though. And then they're also adding Chime to the roster, moving up Instinct from their academy roster, as well as who's their AD carry now, and then also a top laner Soul. And they also added Solo to the TSM academy as well, in order to compensate. So a whole lot of changes came out at once, and we've already seen them played this weekend. So I guess any quick thoughts on the new TSM lineup?
Yeah, I think given the scenario, it seems like a pretty decent change. I don't know. The Huni stuff is the most like I don't know. It's the least speculative, I feel like. So I'll touch on that first. It sucks to see Huni go. Obviously, I feel like I wonder. I feel like this is like kind of an explanation for I don't know some of the times in TSM Legends where it felt like like even last split where Bjergsen was flaming people for not practicing solo queue and that kind of stuff. I imagine that this kind of is related to that. You're literally injured. You probably don't want to just go and grind shitty NA solo queue while your wrists hurt.
Yeah, or even
Um,
Champions Queue.
yeah, or Champions queue. Yeah, so for that reason, I mean it sucks, but like I think as like I feel like people should be excited for Soul. It's a similar track to like what Danny did last year, where he was off of like an amateur squad, like within the last calendar year. Went to academy just in the off season of summer, I think, like before summer split. And he was on a different like proving grounds team, and then TSM picked him up as an academy pickup. Just this summer, and so now he's straight into LCS. Obviously under some strange circumstances, but if you've listened to like his interviews, and he was on Hotline League this week, I think, and he sounds like he's a really like interesting, like definitely motivated, interesting kind of character. So it was cool to see him do pretty well this week. But I feel like that's like the best pickup. I think the other ones feel a lot like you kind of just like we have to make a change. Like this some of the Shiny stuff they had a lot of complaints as an org. It seemed like when they dropped him, it was kind of a damning statement that the GM had left about him, just saying that he
Right.
was saying that he was a detriment to the development of the team, kind of like that. Like that was not just a, hey, we've decided to part ways. That was a, look, we need to get Shenyi out of here. Um, which yeah, kind of sucks given that they pulled him over from China at the beginning of the year. Um, but hopefully he can still find his way, like either back in LPL or LDL or wherever he wants to go.
Yeah, it's so crazy, like the way they they kind of put Shenyi on blast like that, and it looks like he has no future at LCS and TSM at least, or the academy roster. So kind of weird, and yeah, I wouldn't think that any other team is gonna pick him up before he goes back. And so yeah, like you said, TSM picked up like two LDL players at the start of this year, and both of them are gone halfway through.
Yeah.
and that plan just did not work out at all.
Yeah, I feel like that the Shenny stuff at least seems to me like it has to be pretty true, you know? Like I it sucks overall for the guy, but I think at the same time he brought some of that out of him. Like I mean it's obviously a bad situation. He got benched like on multiple occasions into fucking academy, but to to act the way he did, I guess if the way that they put it is true, then that's a really shitty way to like, act towards your teammates who, are just trying to do their best thing for their career too. So I it makes sense that I would let him go if that's the case, but it's crazy that he is like only in an A basically for like 4 months and then kicked back to China.
Yeah, just to play some League of Legends, and then he can't even do that now.
Yeah. And then the
Another
last
TSM. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say the tactical change. What do you feel about that? Because I think to some degree, I don't know how much you can fault tactical because of the I don't know inconsistency that he's had with his supports. But at the same time, I don't know how you can fault all his supports because of the inconsistency that tactical has had. So this feels like the least like the swap that TSM like as an org would want to make the least because of like the promise that they had in tactical as a pickup. But at the same time, I feel like they definitely had to.
I'm a bit bummed about that tactical move, because I think that as a player, tactical is still in the top six of NA resident AD carries, and so like replacing him for another resident doesn't really do it for me. It's just like, oh, now it's just another person who has to gain experience as an LCS, player, and then it's just a matter of time before the next person becomes, rocket jump happy and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Um, so I definitely value like experience and international experience and time on stage a lot. However, at some point, I guess yeah, tactical does have to get sharper, and be sharp without Core JJ. And it kind of did seem like his time on TSM so far hasn't been, I guess, like 100% clean. There have been some games where, wow, Tactical is being really well off on his own. And I remember there was like a Jinx game in the spring split where he did an absurd amount of his team's damage or something like that,
yeah,
and was like a pivotal point of that game as well. So it's not that he can't do it, but I wish that I hope that he can, I guess, take this time to work on his consistency and make his way back.
yeah. It just reminds me of in the off season when Doublelift was doing his ADC power rankings, and it was like, he was like number one to me, number two Sven, and then actual super number one is tactical with good mental, and then tactical normally is like at 5 or 6, and then tactical with bad mental is like down way below near like I'm a cutie pie level, and it's like, damn, bro. I I it's like you watch that and it's like the only thing I remember being like, ooh shit, if tactical is like on his game, TSM is gonna be fucking good. And then now I didn't even think of the possibilities like, damn, if tactical mental booms, he's gonna get fucking benched. That's fucking bad, dude. So it sucks. Yeah, I think that part just sucks that if it's just like a total confidence issue. Like, I mean, the kid can play. Like, we've seen him play, but it just has not come together this year for whatever reason. So, yeah, hopefully he does pretty good in academy or starts to find his way again before the end of the year. Just so, you don't end up lost and like not on a team.
Yeah, but I would say though that if before any of this happened, if you had to ask me, if TSM has to make some changes, what changes would you make? Going through it, I would think Maple and Spica are probably fine. I wouldn't have guessed Huni, and but Huni having to step away because of wrist injuries is that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I would have said like I suppose changes to the bot lane and maybe even changes to both of the players down there would make sense for them to at least try something out if what they've got going on now isn't working. And so There having to be a change to 3 players overall is like, a big shift out of nowhere. But at least it was week 4, and there's still a long ways to go for everyone.
Yeah, I have a lot of respect for Hooney for being able to, I mean, like say like, look, I'm sure that to some degree it was like we aren't doing so well. Probably he thinks he isn't doing so well himself, and he's like, this is the limit for me. Like I should not be playing if my wrists are this bad. So to make that call and like do it in the middle of the season instead of like waiting for an off season and then like being like, oh, actually my wrist fucking hurt, I'm retiring, or I need to take a split off or whatever, and then like having that as like the you look back and you're like, oh, that's why they were so bad or anything like that. Being able to say that now and just like step down when he needs to is a pretty respectable thing. And I imagine that probably drove like some of these other changes. It's like, well, like if we have to replace Hooney, let's make our roster adjustments, whether they were just doing mixed scrims or whatever for like the first week of the break, and then decided on this roster come the second week. Like that's a good time to do these things like as a bundle.
Uh huh. Yeah, I think so too. Any last thoughts on the changing TSM roster?
I think the only one thing I want to touch on, did you see today that that Hooney has been like his contract has been changed to that of like a coach, like
Oh no, I
officially.
haven't seen
I
that.
think I think I saw Travis Gafford say that Hooney is now like officially a coach for TSM, and that Kays has been like removed from their contract database. And I haven't seen anything about him like leaving or like I don't know. We haven't seen specifics other than like what the contracts have changed. Um, but I'm interested, I guess, to see if it's like Kays got fired or he's just like moving to like some like League of Legends management position kind of thing, or like player development position that's not a like stage coach. But Hooney has like officially, and I say that with like quotation marks around it, has officially taken over as like a coach for the team.
Hmm. That would be pretty interesting to hear because, to my understanding, I think Kays is like the last member of like the last generation of TSM coaches and coaching staff since Parth and a lot of other people had left and they brought in Chowie and stuff like that. So I thought that Kays was like I thought they must have had a lot of um respect for Kays. So
Oh,
well, I
okay,
I guess
okay. Before I start spitting that stuff, that there's on the League of Legends or on the TSM subreddit on this like Twitter post that got posted here. The general manager said that Kays is still with the team. Hooney's on stage for the next few weeks since he's been helping the team already, and that according to Riot rules, you can only have 4 coaching staffs on the official contract. So Hooney's taking over that spot so that he can be the one on stage, but Kays is still like there helping out.
uh-huh. That makes sense. Sweet. All right, one last TSM item that I wanted us for us to cover is the official Riot investigation of TSM Reginald, which was released about a week ago. And I just want to kind of cover the TLDR points over it. So 3 bullet points. The league believes that there is a pattern and practice of disparaging and bullying behavior exhibited by Andy Dinh towards TSM players and staff members. The second part details the punishment, which is TSM is fined $75,000, and Andy must complete sensitivity training and executive training, and he is placed on probation for the next 2 years across the Riot ecosystem. And then scrolling all the way down, there's some elaboration on what that means, what a 2-year probation means. So it says, TSM and Reginald have committed themselves to a culture shift within their organization, and we want to provide space for that positive shift to occur. However, we want to ensure that, should that shift not occur, the consequences within the Riot ecosystem are also clear. Any finding by the LCS or any other Riot governing body that Reginald has violated Riot rules during this probation period will bring severely enhanced penalties. So that's kind of interesting to me. Whatever that means. Any thoughts on this ongoing Reginald saga about him and his mental against TSM employees.
Yeah, this is like the next step of I'm glad that there's some like tangible punishment coming out of it. I don't like it's interesting because you know that like technically Riot can't do anything about it or like the LCS can't do anything about like just whatever they've reported on unless it's like breaking actual rules that they have written in an agreement somewhere, right? So the LCS rules are like this is like in that post it's talking about like him basically having bad behavior, right? And that's the only thing you can really get him on because that's the only rule that like actually handles it. And it's not like the some of the other stuff that came out like about the legal, you know, standing of like employees and that kind of thing. They don't get into that, or they say like, look, we can't rule on this because we're not fucking lawyers, um, or you know, a judge in a court of law kind of thing. We're just like we just have to reprimand him for what we've agreed on. Um, so just the fact that I don't know the punishment isn't that much. Like the 75 grand is you know chump change to the $250 million that they have from FTX or whatever. But the fact that they have to do something as well as like the probation part for Riot is pretty interesting because that feels like I don't know at this point if anything else comes forward, you know, Spica comes out and says, "Look, Reggie yelled at us all after we went 2-4, and then you know kicked Shenyi onto a boat to get back home, and like you know has withheld payments or anything like that." Then like that becomes the point where now they have precedence to legitimately like remove TSM or remove Reginald, like what happened with Equifox and that kind of stuff. Like that could happen in the foreseeable future uh, if this pattern continues, which is a good precedent to set, I think. But um, yeah, interesting that this happened, and now you know you look back and the TSM investigation found no wrongdoing, kind of thing.
Uh huh. Any other thoughts on the Riot investigation of Andy Dinh and TSM?
I do like the mentions they've made about like what the Players Association has done and having the like the tip line for any players or current employees like through them. It's nice to see just like Riot actually doing something about Reginald. It's nice to see the Players Association actually do something that like should prop up, you know, current players.
Yeah, and I wonder if that tip line is just for like any team in general, and I guess as well.
Yeah, I imagine that they it's definitely like telling them like look, if something is happening, you should tell us, you know, if other teams are getting screwed over somehow.
Yeah, somehow. All right, enough with the Debbie Downers. Let's get into LCS Week 4 with some excitement in the and throughout the weekend. Let's just cover some of the standings. Now that 2 weeks have gone by and a couple of things have changed, CLG is not at the very top, but they're still up there. Let's start with EG. They haven't dropped a game in a couple of weeks, being in first place at 8-1. Next up are TL and 100 Thieves, tied in for second and place at 6-3. Next up, we have CLG and FlyQuest tied at 5-4. Then we have Cloud9 and Golden Guardians tied at 4-5. Seventh place or eighth place we have TSM at 3-6, and then lastly at the bottom we have both Immortals and Dignitas at 2-7. I guess just right off the bat, dude, how are the standings coming out to you now that we're through? I think the first round robin of every team having played every other team so far.
Yeah, I think for me there's two big like red spots like that are standing out to me on this, and one is EG is 8-1, and some of this is also for me. I was on vacation during week 3 of the LCS. I didn't watch any games. Then there was that whole break, and then I came back and watched this last week. So I only have like there's a very long gap here between like what I remember and what I see now. But EG is 8-1, which is really good. You know, we talked a lot after like MSI about whether EG would have like the you know the like vacation phase and have take some time to get back into things, but they really are just looking like, hey, we figured out how to beat all these NA scrubs, and we're gonna keep doing that, and it doesn't matter how out of shape we are or whatever. Um, So that's pretty crazy to see how they're running the league.
Yeah, I think that's kind of my thoughts on TL right now. Is they should have this kind of. I would expect TL to have this air around them of like, okay, let's put Maul through these NA scrubs, but
Yeah.
that is not happening. Not that they're losing a lot. I think they've just lost to EG, 100 Thieves, and one other team so far. So they're still at the top of the standings. Second place is not that bad after 4 weeks. Um, but I think just the expectations set for their roster, they should be they should be have either sole contention of second place or at least one game behind first place is what I would have thought. Um, and kind of had expected of them of this like really stacked roster. So it's kind of disappointing to see that they're not dominating in that sense. That's just my 2 cents on TL.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of that. I think another one that similarly feels like they should be dominating a little more than they are is Cloud9. That's the other mark for me that I'm like, are they really 4-5? They're really under 500, tied for, the bottom half of the league. Like that's, I mean, they're, TSM could beat them in a head-to-head and suddenly overtake them in a like top six position for playoffs. Like that's crazy to me right now. I know they started out with that sub week and they went 0-3, right, to start out the
Yeah.
season. So that's kind of rough to in terms of like a standings, but that means they've only gone 2-2 with their main roster that we expected a lot more out of. So I didn't get to watch last week's games, but this week they had the one pretty good win over TSM, but that's also TSM. I don't know how much you can give them credit. And then they lost just this on Sunday to Immortals, which is like really sus. So I'm a little worried about how the C9 roster is gonna shape up. They feel like the team that can really like drop out of top six and bring some random bottom tier team into the upper bracket for playoffs.
hmm Yeah, and there's just like I would say kind of a cluster around the middle right now where a lot of teams are just 1 or 2 games close to each other, and only EG has pulled out ahead. So I feel like even the TL can maybe not might not even be safe. They'll make playoffs since playoffs is during the summer has like such a wide cast of who's qualified. But
Yeah,
um,
barring like a double lift spring 2020 level of meltdown, like they're in playoffs.
yeah, but yeah, I mean CLG could be bottom four next week. GG Golden Guardians could be top four next week. A lot of stuff could go down this weekend that could drastically shift the standings. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun moving into the second round robin, having expectations of who beat who last time, and then also what's going to change moving forward.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Yeah, with EG being the like one aside, the rest of them all look like, well, also maybe not Immortals and also maybe not taking Class, but like everybody else is technically they're there, like mathematically there, right? Like there's runs that could happen um for every other team in the league. So we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah. All right. So this past week four of the LCS, were there any matches that caught your attention throughout the weekend?
I think the couple like of kind of important upsets were, I don't know, we already mentioned the Immortals beating C9 one. But there was on Saturday, the first game of the day was FlyQuest versus 100 Thieves, and FlyQuest like kind of pulled out a pretty like convincing win against them. It wasn't like an overall stomp for a lot of the game, but I remember watching this like for a little bit, and I think I had a place that I was going somewhere, so I was like only like tabbed in for a little, and FlyQuest just kept like building up a kill lead, and then at some point just like took it Baron, won a couple fights, and like ended the game. It was like I put down my phone for a little bit and then opened it back up a few minutes later, and they were like 11-1 was the score, and they were at the Nexus, and I was like, holy shit, FlyQuest just beat up 100 Thieves, and I don't think very many people had that on their radar for this weekend. So that was a pretty big game for me.
Yeah, I would say that that 100 Thieves game was an upset. How about any other games?
I think probably the only other one, I don't know, that there's like two flip-flops of that where the very next day, FlyQuest looking like they're suddenly like a pretty good team, top tier. If they win this game, they're top two in the league kind of thing. And then they went and lost to the new look TSM. It was a pretty good game from TSM. Like we had uh, like TSM, their new top laner was playing pretty well on Gnar. Instinct got a pentakill, like coming out of academy. Like it was very Wild Turtle replacing Chaos vibes kind of stuff from that one. But it was well played overall, like as a team, it seemed like. And again, it was like, well, FlyQuest I thought was a really good team apparently, and then they lost to TSM, so it was like, damn, what's going on? But then the game right after, it was 100 Thieves who were like, now it's like, if they lost to FlyQuest and FlyQuest just lost to TSM, then maybe neither of those teams are very good. And then they're playing CLG, who this season is like basically all we can think of is that CLG is actually fucking good. But then they kind of went and beat up on CLG with like, I don't know that I didn't watch too much of that game, but just like looking back and you're looking at comps and you're seeing CLG pick Vi and like they have a Fiora that's kind of getting shit on Azir that's like I don't know it was a weird game. It was a really well played game I thought from Abadage, but like overall it's like I it's so hard to put uh like a power reading on any of these middle tier teams now because I don't know especially 100 Thieves. I feel like this is all year you just don't know how good they are. They want to lose random games that they should win, and they win games that they should lose, and you think they're really good, and then they get to playoffs and get 0-3. Like I don't know how to expect that from them. And CLG is actually still CLG, so how am I supposed to predict that too?
For sure. Any other thoughts on this weekend's games before we give a preview to the next week?
Now let's just hop into next week, dude. I think I've got everything I can out of this week.
For sure. Let's start with Saturday's games. I think first lined up we have a rematch between Evil Geniuses and CLG, which is EG's only lost so far this split, if I remember correctly.
Mhm.
Are you looking forward to this game as much as I am?
Yeah, this one should be fun, I think. I don't know. I feel like CLG's got to have something up their sleeve. I feel like you probably, as EG, you probably have this chip on your shoulder. That This is like the reason you're not undefeated. And then as CLG, you probably are like, we're ready to make it like 2-0 for us. And if it comes down to it, we'll have the tiebreaker. Um, I think I think it's hard to bet against EG, but certainly if I was a betting man, I think CLG is the most likely team that I would put money on to take another game off them this split.
Interesting. Okay. Next up, I'm looking at the third match on Saturday, which is TSM versus 100 Thieves. Kind of just echoing over like kind of the mess of a weekend in last week that they had of like okay, bad in one game, good in the next, and then so what are they really at? And so that's kind of funny that they're gonna face each other this week, and we'll kind of see where the new TSM roster is at. I would give the favor to 100 Thieves, but I think that's the fun in this matchup for me is which team is going to show up. Is it going to be like
Yeah.
the funny 100 Thieves or the playoff gods 100 Thieves? Well, we'll see.
Right. Yeah, I think for that one I'm with you that I think it's probably 100 Thieves sided. Of the two TSM games that they showed this weekend, the one that they lost was like with a really like well played like top lane exploitation, I guess, from Cloud9, like a lot of early dives and that kind of stuff on Soul. Um, and I think that some days the kind of player someday in closer or the kind of like duo that will really punish a inexperienced top laner. Like in comparison to that FlyQuest game, it was Soul talked it up a lot where he was like, "Look, I played Philip in Academy. I beat him up there. I'm gonna beat him up here." Like that kind of stuff. So I think if he has that same kind of like brash confidence going against someday, it probably won't work out the same. And I think 100 Thieves has like overall like a better matchup into it. But who knows? Like you said, we might have the for fun 100 Thieves show up and just hand them another win.
Yeah, I guess so. Um, Anything else for the Saturday games?
No, I think that's it for Saturday, unless IMT wants to be another top tier team and take down Team Liquid. But yeah, that's those are the only ones that I think you like have to watch. Check the post game threads for the other ones.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a mood actually. Um, all right, Sunday games. Any Sunday games that catch your attention, my good sir?
Sunday, I think TL versus CLG, another like banger, like starting the day game. It's kind of weird that it's CLG and starting off both days, but like yeah, I think CLG is still probably a pretty good team. I think they're proven that they're good. They're only 5-4, which is not like you're not dominating, and there are other teams like close behind, like we said, but they're in a good spot if they can take down TL. That and depends on what happens Saturday, but right now that'd make them tied in the standings. So that's a pretty hype matchup. I think a good what's the word, juxtaposition of like new talent versus veteran talent between those two teams. So it'll be interesting to see how they play out.
Good. I think that's a good point. Yeah, a lot of the newer players on CLG matching up against like a lot of veteran players over there. I'm kind of interested. They're not like crazy matchups for Cloud9, but I'm hoping to see them sail through this weekend with 2-0, having matchups against Dignitas and Golden Guardians. I think it'll be interesting to see how they do against Golden Guardians in particular, having both being at the same standing, same position standing wise right now. So I'm interested to see how Golden Guardians is going to do against this iteration of Cloud9.
Yeah, that's a good call out. The fact that they're both tied, I think that matchup seems kind of weird because Golden Guardians is the kind of team to have like kind of interesting drafts this split. The like stuff like the Seraphine, was it Seraphine Mundo, or they picked Mundo? It was like Senna Mundo into Seraphine and Karma.
Yeah,
Um, that's a really good like draft adaptation. And Ole has been talking about it all split, kind of like about how he's willing to pick those kind of out of the box picks, and Anero is someone I think everybody on that team is pretty willing to draft a kind of experimental draft. And I think C9 is probably one of the only teams in the league that is smart enough to not get like totally boned by an experimental draft. Like they'll see it coming, and they have good enough coaching staff that will uh, be able to see like what they need to do in response. So we'll see. I'm interested mostly just about the draft between that game, and how it plays out. If it seems most likely to me like GG will try something like that, and then C9 will have like just shut it down, and then it won't be a very close game, but it'll feel like a close draft, and then it'll end up one sided one way.
yeah. Hmm.
We'll see
Next
though.
up we
We'll see.
have, yeah, we'll see. Next up we have Evil
Evil
Geniuses versus
Thieves,
100. Yeah, I know, right? Psycho. Evil
technically true.
Geniuses versus 100 Thieves. What do you think about this matchup of these two top three teams?
Yeah, I mean, this one is obviously the Battle of the Titans, according to the standings at least. It should be a good game. Hopefully, it's a good game, just for the sake of the league, right? That these are top teams. This is a potential finals matchup. It should be exciting, but to me, it seems most likely that EG just beats 100 Thieves. I don't know. I'm not expecting a banger game, but I can be proven wrong.
Darn. When you put it that way, it feels kind of right the way that EG has been dominating the league.
Yeah,
Um, but also just kind of sad, I guess. Like,
it is
can
kind of
anyone
sad.
beat EG? Because I feel like it's more like, can anyone beat EG instead of, wow, EG's beating everyone.
Yeah, it's kind of true. It's kind of true.
Hmm.
But I like this EG team better. Like this is a better first place team to be like, can anyone beat them? Like I feel like there have been teams like that where it's like, gosh, can anyone beat them? And it's like you don't actually want to watch like you're rooting for the place team to lose. But this way it's like I'm rooting for EG. I just don't think anybody else is good enough, you know?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And then I think for fun, I think the TSM Immortals matchup could be fun as well, just because, again, what could happen? Who knows?
True.
That's the fun.
They're playing the crabs in a barrel game right now where they're both. Have you heard about that?
No.
Where crabs that are like caught in a barrel, or in a bucket, like if one tries to climb out, the others will like actively pull them back down so that they can't escape. Like even though they're all like, they're all stuck in the same bucket, they're gonna get boiled and eaten. But like the ones that are down there don't want somebody else to get out. I imagine that's like gonna be this game. That's TSM is like they might win the game on Saturday and be like, yeah, we're fucking good. We beat 100 Thieves. We beat Flag Quest. Like we should be top six. And then Immortals is gonna be like, nope, nope, nope. I'm Power of Evil. I have to shit on you guys for doing me dirty last year. Like, get back down to the bottom half, baby.
Yeah, we'll see if TSM is able to escape the bottom half, and I guess in a funny way, like all playoff spots are still up for contention, and so this could be the start of a playoffs move for Immortals.
True. They'll need some big moves, but it could be the start.
Yeah. All right. Any last thoughts on week 5 of the LCS coming up?
No, I think that hits the big notes for me. I'm pretty good.
All right. Okay, that's going to be it for episode 60 of On the Hunt, a League of Legends podcast. I hope you all enjoyed it, and if you did, be sure to subscribe to our podcast on the service that you are listening to us on if you haven't already. We'd appreciate it if you also give us a rating or hit the like button to show us some support. You can find us on YouTube as well as your podcast player of choice, from Apple Podcasts to Spotify and so forth. We'll see you all next week for another episode of On the Hunt.
So long.